Dark Market, as Joanne said, was a website, www.darkmarket.com. When you got there, it was basically a forum, a members' forum. Now, I don't know what the equivalent is here in the United States, but in Britain we have a very famous forum called mumsnet.com or .co.uk. And Mumsnet is where if you're a distressed parent of teenagers, say, as I am, you go on to Mumsnet, and there's a whole series of things. There'll be something like, my teenage daughter, my 13-year-old daughter is on the pill, I've discovered, what do I do? And then a whole sort of series of other distressed parents will explain what you do when you find your 13-year-old daughter is on the pill. So it's the same format as Mumsnet, it's for criminals. So you sign on, but you have, obviously you have to be vetted more thoroughly than if you're just a distressed parent. And I'll come to the vetting procedure a little later. But so you sign on, and then you have a row of things, and instead of teenagers, toddlers, and so on and so forth, you have viruses, credit card fraud, identity theft, and that sort of thing. And you sign on to read about those particular subjects, how to perpetrate the crimes, and above all else, Dark Market and its predecessors were, as Joanne said, a place where you could exchange information in order to carry out crimes. And the main sort of the bulk of crime on the internet, what we call high volume, low impact, is credit and debit card fraud. So about 60% of you here in this room will have had your credit or debit cards compromised at some point over the past 5 years, whether you know it or not. That's because it's very easy for criminals to get hold of credit card details, store them electronically, and then sell them or use them in ATM machines around the world. And the reason why Dark Market and its predecessors were so successful is that the original criminal forum, which was founded perhaps appropriately, as we may discover later, in Odessa in Ukraine in 2001, called carderplanet.com. The original forum came up with the answer to the fundamental challenge posed to criminals operating on the web. And that fundamental challenge is, how can I trust the person I'm doing business with when, as a criminal, it's axiomatic that they're untrustworthy? And this is quite a conundrum. And Carderplanet came up with this brilliant idea. It was run by 5 administrators who called themselves, rather unimaginatively in my opinion, the family. And one of the family was designated as the escrow officer. And the escrow officer was an independent arbiter. So essentially, playing the role that mafia organizations, the very essence of mafia organizations, that what they've been playing since the middle of the 19th century when the mafia first emerged as a social and economic force in Western Sicily. So what happens is that I'm a criminal and I've got 5,000 credit card details that I want to sell, roughly at around $7, $8 a pop. So that's quite a lot of money. So I send my 5,000 credit card details electronically to the escrow officer at Carderplanet. And the potential purchaser sends the money to pay for those digitally also to the escrow officer. So the escrow officer has both the credit cards and the money in his possession. And I use the gender advisedly throughout this talk. We will be talking about men and not women. 95% of hackers are male. And the escrow officer then sends a random sample of the credit cards to his friends around the world in Rio, in Toronto, in Wellington, in Dubai. And they go and use the credit cards in ATM machines. And if they work, they're allowed to keep the money, and the escrow officer is allowed to keep the money as a fee for the service. And if it works, he then releases the credit card details to the purchaser and the money to the vendor. And this, in 2001, when it was invented, devised, led to a champagne period of crime on the internet and beyond, because banks at this point and financial institutions and companies had no idea, some would say even no interest, because they were so obsessed about making huge sums of money through speculative practices on global markets that the money lost to cybercrime was simply not sufficient for them to register on their complex networks. But that's by the way. So that's what dark market was. It wasn't just for credit cards. It was also, you could buy and sell viruses, as I said. You could buy and sell identities. If you needed a passport from any country in the world, you could buy it in dark market, and so on and so forth.